Welcome everyone to the 81st Celebrity Synastry chart reading, where I will be looking into Jennifer Aniston and David Schwimmer. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Adeline and it is so nice to meet you. On this channel, I look at the dynamic between two celebrities using astrology. For those new and returning, I take notes on a synastry chart looking at the personal planet signs aspects and of birth times available house overlays. I share these notes and add my insights and interpretations along the way. So if that sounds good to you, subscribe and click the bell to join us weekly, and let's get right into it. Starting off with the sun, we have Jennifer's sun in Aquarius and David's sun in Scorpio. These are both fixed signs. It's an emotionally distant relationship and they are frequent arguments. I assume emotionally distant, potentially if they are co-workers. I mean, they were very close, but maybe just not emotionally close. We will see a bit more, hopefully. David is more emotionally invested than Jennifer, and Jennifer doesn't understand David. David's sun overlaid in Jennifer's first house. David really likes Jennifer, and marriage is possible. I mean, I believe both of them aren't married at this point. Like, I believe they both had past marriages. I think now both of them have like separated or divorced, whatever, from the previous spouses. So technically, yes, at this point in time. Jennifer is energized by David and David is a light in Jennifer's life. They both feel positive about the other and they both feel familiar with each other. They both boost the other's self-esteem and David feels like Jennifer really gets him. They bring out the best in each other and David feels he can be himself around Jennifer. Jennifer appreciates the admiration she gets from David. So I feel like all of this is really emphasizing what we saw earlier, that he's more emotionally invested in this than Jennifer. Jennifer's sun trine David's moon. There is honest communication and Jennifer relies on David's support. So this support could potentially be the admiration that David is giving to Jennifer, being encouraging and supportive of her. I imagine would come with that. David relies on Jennifer's wisdom and they are naturally cooperative, which is definitely a blessing considering their relationship dynamic or what it used to be. David tends to be dependent on Jennifer and they both feel they can rely on each other. Jennifer's sun squared David's Neptune. There are misunderstandings and delusions and deceptions occur. They both glamorize each other and attraction is based on appearance. David promises more than gives and Jennifer believes David is a soulmate. Okay, interesting. David eventually disappoints Jennifer. This is a side note. I know we're talking about the actors, not the characters like Ross and Rachel, which, I'm going to need to be very, separate them because, what they are on the show is not what they are in real life. But just this aspect does summarize the sort of Ross and Rachel dynamic, doesn't it? They both need to be clear about expectations. So now it's time for moon. We have Jennifer's moon in Sagittarius and David's moon in Gemini. These are polarity sister signs in the mutable signs as well. They love traveling together. Would they have traveled together? I don't believe they would have traveled when they were filming together and everything. It was a very set-based show, right? So they wouldn't have done that. Maybe outside of that they would have. They prioritize their freedom and they have similar emotional needs. So potentially we did see earlier they have an emotionally distant relationship. Potentially both of them are naturally a bit more or lean more towards the more emotionally distant, detached side. So potentially that is just what works for them. They have a satisfying friendship and they have an intellectual relationship. They share a love for books and movies and Jennifer is more optimistic than David. David's moon overlaid in Jennifer's 9th house. David idolizes Jennifer, so I assume when it comes to both of them glamorizing each other, that would more so come from David's end. And we did see a bit earlier when it comes to the we also did see earlier that David does really provide Jennifer with a lot of admiration and everything, so this adds up. David feels Jennifer is out of his league and David brings out the best in Jennifer, which we did see earlier. They do generally seem to bring out the best in each other. Jennifer may become dependent on David and Jennifer may become emotionally attached to David. This is interesting. I'm hoping that we see a bit more on the emotional relationship, more notes on that, because it's very interesting. It seems like on the whole, it seems like this could potentially be a more emotionally detached relationship. But it seems like as individuals, they want to have that emotional relationship. So hopefully we see a bit more how that goes. possible for long distance, and they share similar attitudes on politics and religion. There's mutual respect, admiration, and affection. Their moon signs are opposite to each other, so they have contrasting emotional needs, and they are strongly attached to the other. I see the attached to each other. You know, we have been seeing the admiration from David's end, but I feel like on both ends, it seems like they both actually do help each other out, and they are a good, stable sort of like support person for the other. Excellent communication is needed, and it is difficult to be in sync. Certain habits will become unbearable for the other, which I'm sure on the movie set, I mean, you are there for like 10 years, that's the thing. Like, it is a workplace where, you know, it is different from like the living environment, but I assume on those sort of like sets, you're there for a long time, you know, long hours and everything, and you're there for like 10 plus years. I'm sure you would pick up on things like weird habits like that, you know. Jennifer's moon square David's Saturn. Jennifer feels emotionally insecure. Okay. Possibility of an awkward relationship, and Jennifer feels judged by David, which is a bit odd. Potentially the only way I could think of maybe her feeling judged by David, if David is glamorizing her, potentially he has a particular vision of her, and maybe when she does something outside of that, maybe David judges her. Maybe, I'm not sure. I hope we see a bit more. David sees Jennifer as needy and oversensitive. Interesting. Jennifer's moon square David's Uranus. Jennifer is possessive of David, and Jennifer feels emotionally insecure around David. This is interesting. We're seeing a lot more. I mean, we've only been really seeing on Jennifer's end that she is emotionally insecure. We literally just saw that repeated twice there. So I wonder what David is in this emotion. Like, we just saw him being a bit more emotionally invested in this relationship, and then, you know, Jennifer feeling emotionally insecure and just very attached to David in that way. So I wonder, like, what David's part is in this. Maybe it is a superficial emotional investment he has, and Jennifer is just a bit stronger in that. I really want to see more, because what is this? The relationship can begin suddenly. I'm not surprised. Jennifer's moon square David's Pluto. Jealousy and emotional manipulation is underlying. David senses Jennifer's unconscious needs and manipulates her with it. I really don't like that. I mean, I don't think I have to explain that anymore, but it is just weird considering what their emotional relationship potentially could be. It seems like an awkward emotional relationship, so it feels a bit weird that, you know, manipulating her unconscious needs, like, come on. David tends to be controlling over Jennifer, and projection is a challenge. Both need to let go of the idea that love only exists within control. Both need to work through power struggles. I'm sure, would there have been a real power struggle dynamic within the show? Maybe, because, I mean, they were all like, you know, co-stars together. I don't believe, like, technically there would be any sort of like lead characters, particularly with those two. You could argue that like Jennifer was kind of like the breakout star in all of this, but still, I feel like they were pretty equal when the show was actually running, wasn't it? There's a deep emotional transformation, and they both may need to work through some psychological demons from the past, which I feel like makes sense. Like, they were both a bit, I don't want to say a bit older, that makes it sound like they're very old. But they were both, you know, at the point they were doing the show, I believe they were both like sort of like mid-late 20s, so they would have had, you know, ample time to get some psychological demons to work through. David's moon square Jennifer's Jupiter. There's a tendency to be extreme and excessive, and there's poor judgment that can lead to trouble. I mean, so far I'm not really obsessed with like David's like potential poor judgment of Jennifer. They are too optimistic as a couple, and they both feel free with their emotions. This is weird. I need more information on David in this emotionally, because otherwise this feels very like one-sided, and David's just a bit there. There's a failing to keep promises. We did see that early on David's end. It's a relationship about determining boundaries. I feel like so far, you know, considering the matter of like, were they co-workers or more than co-workers? I mean, we did see earlier marriage is possible, but like this relationship has been a whole lot of, you know, besides the iffy emotional stuff, I feel like it is a lot of them just being quite reliable and supportive of each other. you know, the last couple aspects have been a bit of a bump in the road. I don't feel like necessarily suggesting like they had a very serious like relationship outside of being co-workers, if that makes sense. But potentially, like, hopefully we will see a bit more. Maybe if they had like a strong attraction to each other, there would be that element of, you know, determining boundaries, like if we're co-workers or not, because I think I mean, it happens, you know, on TV sets and everything and movie sets when you sort of cross those boundaries. It is still not very convenient and easy though to have, if that makes sense. So I feel like they would definitely have that sort of determining boundaries element that they would need to have in their relationship. Hopefully all of that made sense. They both will learn better judgment, and David may become possessive of Jennifer. So this is like a sort of mutual thing then. It's like they're both possessive of each other. Interesting. That would make me go, that is weird with these two and more than co-workers. They meet in an optimistic way. David's moon is square Jennifer's Uranus. This is a repeated aspect, just inverted, so everything from before is further emphasized, but also David is possessive of Jennifer, and David feels emotionally insecure around Jennifer. Okay, finally we're seeing something from David. So it seems like potentially, like, maybe they are scared to be emotional around the other, because it seems like a mutual thing with the emotional security, but they are also like kind of invested, you know, in the other emotionally. So potentially maybe they just have difficulty as individuals with their emotions. It's not necessarily like, as you know, because of the other person, I'm emotionally insecure. It seems like it is just themselves as individuals are not as emotionally like in touch, I guess you could say, or just, you know, leaning towards that more emotional or insecure side, sorry. So it seems like an individual problem rather than the other, if that makes sense. David's moon is square Jennifer's Pluto. This is a repeated aspect, just inverted. So everything from before is further emphasized, but also Jennifer can sense David's unconscious needs and manipulates him with it. And Jennifer tends to be controlling over David. This is weird. Why are they both so like controlling over the other? What? Like, I need more. Now for the intermission. This video is brought to you by me, my Etsy store, Adeline the Astrologer. If you ever watch this and think, hey, I would like her to read my Synastry chart, well, I will. I do personalized Synastry chart readings on my Etsy store. I do both basic and detailed ones. The basic ones are a bit more simple to understand and really good for those just beginning out in astrology, getting their heads around it, or just as a fun gift idea. The detailed readings are very similar to what I do here, so it's a lot of it just with my insights and interpretation on the chart. So if you're interested in that and everything else, astrology and tarot, readings and gifts, definitely check out my Etsy store for that. I'm always releasing new other things there as well. And you can even just favorite the store just to support me for free. Thank you for listening, and let's get back to the reading. So now it's time for Mercury. We have Jennifer's Mercury in Aquarius and David's Mercury in Sagittarius. They have common ground and they show positive and outgoing communication. Jennifer doesn't understand how David takes things personally, and Jennifer's interest in gossiping tires David. David's Mercury overlaid in Jennifer's second house. They lack common views, so I assume this would be in particular areas, because we did see that they both share similar attitudes on like the politics and religion thing, but potentially in other ways, also outside of like, you know, obviously their careers and everything. Outside of those two areas, potentially that is where they would lack common views. Both get the impression that the other doesn't get them. Maybe, particularly with Jennifer's end, we saw that she feels judged by David. Maybe that is like a sort of like initial thing. Like she gets the impression that David, you know, doesn't judges her and everything. That's why she feels judged by David. Their Mercuries are sextile to each other, so they enjoy conversations together and they're interested in similar subjects. So it seems like more on sort of like the art media thing, they do have that. They have interesting conversations and they have complementary thinking, and misunderstandings are unlikely. Give or take. Jennifer's Mercury opposite David's Jupiter. Different philosophical views, so that is potentially where they have that sort of like, you know, lack of common views and everything. They frequently interrupt each other, and Jennifer sees David as too flippant, mutual lack of understanding, and David sees Jennifer as too rational. Okay. David's Mercury sextile Jennifer's Jupiter. Jennifer appreciates David's thoughts and ideas, and there's open communication. Communication wise, they do seem to be doing pretty well. I know we did see like misunderstandings like once or something, but other than that, I feel like it's pretty good. There's a strong friendship, which we did see earlier, and I feel like makes a lot of sense. Like, I'm, considering what we are seeing here, I feel like definitely good friends, very good co-workers. Jennifer often gives David the benefit of the doubt, and business together is beneficial. Makes sense. They enjoy traveling together, which we're seeing again, maybe like as they got older, as like they finished the show, when the show finished, because I believe like all the cast have generally kept in touch with each other. Potentially like they did go traveling together somewhere. Why not? It's an optimistic meeting we're seeing again, and they love to laugh together. They intellectually stimulate each other, which we already have seen a couple times that they do have that intellectual relationship. David's Mercury sextile Jennifer's Uranus. They attract opportunities as a couple. This is interesting. Like, I wonder where, like, as far as I know, they haven't. When they actually did the show, they met on the show, as far as I know. It's not like they met earlier. But since then, maybe they did, like, as a couple attract opportunities. I don't know where, I mean, their couple dynamic on the actual show, their characters, are quite infamous. So potentially something to do with that. David finds Jennifer intellectually stimulating, not surprisingly so. They are perceptive and intuitive of each other, and they have open communication. They encourage the other's visions. That is lovely. David's Mercury conjunct Jennifer's Neptune. Spirituality is prioritized, and they have a telepathic-like connection. I mean, all we did see was like what we literally last saw with their being perceptive and intuitive of each other. Other than that, we haven't seen anything. There's deceptive and exaggerative communication. This, I unhappily recall that we saw that there's, delusions and deceptions occurring. So, related. David helps Jennifer turn her dreams into reality. Okay, this is something I should have potentially touched on. I mean, why would I have? But, we have kind of been seeing little elements of them potentially meeting together before the actual show, them attracting opportunities as a couple. And, them being very good business partners, and they have a very optimistic meeting. So I wonder if they met before the show, because this would, I guess, line up with that, like David helping Jennifer. Maybe David, had some connections and, brought Jennifer onto the project and everything. So that is there, and I really would be curious as to, when they actually met before the show, if that makes sense. David finds Jennifer confusing. I wonder in what way. This has to be emotionally. Emotionally, these two seem so off. So I feel like it would be that way, because it sees like intellectually he seems to quite enjoy that about her. Habit of telling the other what they want to hear. I mean, we have been seeing a couple notes, this would go back to how, them both glamorizing each other and, that sort of deceptive communication, whatever. I think potentially it could come from that, telling the other what they want to hear and everything. It's probably, potentially, it isn't this sort of, malicious deception and everything. It could just be not wanting to step on anyone's toes. It's hard to talk about practical matters, which I feel like is where they would, because we have been seeing they like common views somewhere, or common views, they like views somewhere, but where was it? I feel like it potentially could be with the practical matters. They are compassionate towards each other. So now it's time for Venus. We have Jennifer's Venus in Aries and David's Venus in Scorpio. These are both signs ruled by Mars in traditional astrology. They're an unusual couple. I don't feel like they are particularly unusual. I feel like they're pretty conventional as far as couples go, especially in Hollywood. Difficult to have a harmonious relationship. I feel like emotionally this seems very off. Those sort of psyche matters I feel like could definitely, prevent a harmonious relationship as well. Particularly since for these two, it kind of seems to lean towards that sort of, being manipulative of each other and everything. That's not great. Emotionally difficult, agreed. This is short term in a passionate relationship. Maybe the actual bulk of their relationship, that sounds weird. It's a weird way to put it. But potentially the sort of peak of their friendship was on the, French show. And potentially they have just been, more acquaintances than that. And, in perspective, their sort of actual friendship was a bit more short term compared to the sort of like more acquaintance, relationship, if that makes sense. David wants commitment and consistency from Jennifer. There does seem to be that element of like David pining for Jennifer, I'm not gonna lie, with what we have seen throughout this reading. David's Venus overlaid in Jennifer's first house. David is attracted to Jennifer and David enjoys being seen with Jennifer. Jennifer is flattered by David and Jennifer over time may not appreciate the shallow admiration. I mean, we saw this right at the beginning, like this sort of admiration that Jennifer is getting. And I mean, as I said earlier, we did see the whole boundaries aspect, like, oh, potentially like if one of them is attracted to, or both of them really, but even if one of them is attracted to the other, there would be that sort of like boundaries they would have to set. So I assume this would be more on David's end, setting his own boundaries with how he views Jennifer, in terms of being a co-worker. David doesn't pay attention to the regular Jennifer. Yeah, this is going back right to the beginning where, David is really admiring, Jennifer, glamorizing her, really focusing on her. So it seems like he focuses on the image he has of her in his head. Weirdly enough, could it be like maybe he's seeing her more as Rachel than anything else? Because that would be weird. Jennifer's Venus trine David's Jupiter. David appreciates Jennifer as a friend. Maybe this is him creating those, good boundaries. So I can't knock it. They see the good in each other and they make each other feel more confident, which we have seen mostly in the beginning, but throughout the reading. They're a financially abundant couple and they share inside jokes together, which goes back to how they love to laugh together. So that's nice. That's a nice little thing to be repeated, that they joke around together. They thrive in each other's company and they're a popular couple. That is one way to put it. Jennifer improves David's social life. Okay, so now it's time for Mars. We have Jennifer's Mars in Scorpio and David's Mars in Virgo. Jennifer is possessive of David. This is weird. This whole possession thing and control thing with like, it's mutual as well. I'm not really a fan of it. I wonder, like, I would not be surprised, considering like everything we've been seeing, particularly with this possession thing. I wonder if at some point they try to be a bit more than co-workers, but they kind of, had to set those boundaries and everything. Realize that it was important for boundaries maybe, because it's very weird that we're seeing a lot of this possession and controlling and everything that's mutual. It's an experimental relationship and David tends to be critical of Jennifer. So I guess Jennifer's sort of fears about David judging her went completely wrong, unfortunately. Jennifer intimidates David. I mean, are we surprised with what we have been seeing? David's Mars overlaid in Jennifer's 11th house. David is detached when pursuing Jennifer. Yeah, I mean, throughout this reading, it seems like David is definitely pining for Jennifer. I'm not gonna lie. They both enjoy their freedom here, and Jennifer always feels out of David's reach. We did see earlier how he feels that Jennifer is out of his league, so adds up. It's a friends of benefit style relationship. Okay, this puts things a bit differently because potentially, I mean, it still kind of like goes with like maybe they did try to be a bit more than co-workers for a period of time, but then like it just didn't work, with them being co-workers and everything. Jennifer is intrigued by David's rebelliousness. Was there not a clip of them going around where I feel like, correct me in the comments please, because like I'm recalling from like very vague memory, but I feel like there was some sort of clip where I feel like it wasn't them. One of them admitted to not following the contract's rule that they were obligated to follow, whatever it was, where they couldn't, be with the other co-workers. I feel like it was one of them that was admitted that they didn't really follow that. If that was David, that would like add up very nicely into all of this, because like that is rebelling to, your contract and the rules you're following and everything. Jennifer's Mars trine David's Saturn. David is the anchor. I mean, I feel like he's definitely a bit more invested in this relationship than Jennifer. I feel like on a lot of grounds, they are very equal. I feel like where they are not is David's, seems to be a bit pining more for Jennifer, and I feel like in that way he's the anchor. They both can achieve a lot together, and Jennifer finds David's predictability attractive. He definitely seems to be a bit more of the predictable one, doesn't he? Like, he's wanting all this consistency from Jennifer. Jennifer feels she can depend on David, and David appreciates Jennifer's individuality. Jennifer's Mars sextile David's Uranus. They encourage the other's independence, which is very nice. I mean, they would kind of have to if they are co-workers. It's an experimental relationship. Yeah, like honestly, I feel like putting everything together, I would not be surprised if there was a kind of attempt at a relationship during the filming. I feel like it would have been during the filming because, considering that we have been seeing like it's a relationship about determining those boundaries, and it seems like there potentially could have been a bit of a peak to the relationship. I feel like potentially while they were filming Friends, there would have been an attempt or something. Both share humanitarian interests, and David makes Jennifer anxious. Yeah, I mean, we have been seeing that. She definitely seems to be a bit more anxious and a bit more self-conscious around him. Jennifer's Mars conjunct David's Neptune. They are both humanitarians, and Jennifer may resent David for not giving her enough space. I mean, what can I even add to this? Like, it's, what we have seen, really. Jennifer is fascinated by David's ethereal mindset, and David sees Jennifer as a knight in shining armor. In what way? Because I feel like with what we have seen, I mean, we literally did see that David helps Jennifer, like, fulfill a dream life or something like that. So I would have thought it was the other way around, okay. David is likely to become dependent on Jennifer. I mean, it doesn't seem like in a practical way. I mean, we have seen that they mutually are very supportive of each other, so that could be that. But anything that Jennifer is specifically offering, I'm not sure, because David is offering consistency for Jennifer, and like, I will be there because, he seems to be quite piney for her. Jennifer's Mars sextile David's Pluto. Jennifer's daring nature is attracted to David. It seems like, with the last few aspects we have seen, it seems like David is quite attracted to Jennifer, like, as an individual, like we saw, like, the daring nature. Also, I believe it was her independence, or maybe it was just straight up her individuality that David is attracted to. It's competitive and potential to be destructive or dangerous. Ew. That took a turn. There are power issues, which we did see like once before. And I mean, I guess it's not shocking if there were power issues, considering like Jennifer is sort of like the breakout star in particular with that whole Friends dynamic and with these two. And David, as far as I know, has not had as, sparkling or whatever you like to call it, as big of a career as Jennifer did. They have dramatic fights. That took a bit of a turn. We haven't really seen any, arguments or anything. So that was the final aspect, bringing us to the end of the reading. If you are still watching, please share your thoughts below. I would be very curious to see what you guys have to say about this one and how you interpret everything, because I mean, I interpreted it, they were co-workers, had potentially tried to be more than co-workers, but you guys may interpret this differently, and I would be very curious to see how you guys interpret this, because this relationship, I feel like there is a lot of speculation around these two, particularly like, I mean, it was not recent, like a couple years ago now would have been the whole Friends reunion, and as far as the public knows, they are both like available for relationships. So I feel like there is a lot of speculation around these two. There always kind of has been. So if you have made it this far, please consider subscribing for more. I post these readings weekly. Besides that, give this video a like, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!